It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. Also, our newest sponsor, Miguel La Sala, who's the author of the book Rodeo of Doom, and also our sponsor, MichiganMushrooms.net. Check out MichiganMushrooms.net or their Facebook page, Michigan Mushrooms LLC. Now, if it's the first time you're hearing this show, please take a moment, check out OppermanReport.com. It's our website, and we have on there a special members section where you can join, you can subscribe, and you get all kinds of extra shows and extra content that you don't hear live on your station right now. This is only exclusive to members that subscribe to the show. Got a special show today for you. I'll give you a little background. I guess it was about a month ago. It was really weird. About a month ago, I was thinking about this story. I had seen this news report, I guess a couple of years back, about this family in Oregon. I don't even know where it was, in Oregon or what. But I knew that they had did this fire break, and I was watching the news, and they got in trouble for it. That's all I remembered about it. And I was watching the news, and I saw this forest fire, and I says, boy, I wonder whatever happened to that family who did this fire break, and there was a big fire, and they got in trouble for it. And later on that night, our pastor invited some new members of the church over to his home to have coffee and cookies and stuff like that. And I met our guest tonight, Dave Miller, and we started talking. And the weirdest coincidence, he brought up that story. So, and it gave me chills. When I said, "Wow, I was just thinking about this today," and he says, "You should talk to these people, these Hammonds, because I know them." So then all you might say all hell broke loose. I hate to say it, in front of my lay minister friend here, but all this craziness this week with the Bundy people running up there to Oregon and doing the standoff, all kind of stuff. So we have with us today Dave Miller, and we're going to try and get the real facts regarding this story with the Hammond Family Ranch, and as much as he knows. So, Dave, are you there?
Yeah, man. How are you?
Very good, very good. So why don't you tell the audience about yourself? Who is Dave Miller?
Oh man, that's a long story because it's always a journey. You kind of outed me a little bit there as one of the pastors of our church, but that's really only one of the hats that I wear. I have two other pretty large ones that factor into who I am. One is I serve as an executive director of a nonprofit ministry, Adventures in Life, and we do Christian community development in Mexico, primarily southern Mexico, in the state of Oaxaca. But we also work in the areas around Guadalajara in the central part of the country and up in the border area in Ensenada. Been doing that for a little over 20 years. And then I also write a travel, food, and kind of all things Mexico blog called Dave Miller's Mexico, and just trying to share a little bit of the heart of my Mexico as I've experienced it over the last 20 years or so with people who may not have quite the experiences there that I have, or quite the insight, and so. That's kind of it in a nutshell. You mentioned the folks up in Burns. I do know a lot of the people up there, and that's through my ministry because they've been serving alongside of me since around 1996 down south. I've made many trips to that area. And I don't stay in hotels. I stay in homes and just sit around and talk with people and really hear their heart. And for me, just to see what's going on up there right now, it is, it's a little bit of a personal tragedy.
Yeah, and that can't be a big town, right? How many people live up there?
The county geographically is huge. I think in the county, most people will tell you that there's somewhere around maybe 8,000 people that live in the whole county.
Amazing.
Now, you know, the town that's getting all the publicity is Burns. And that's because that's kind of where the seat of government in that little area is sitting. But really, there's two cities that are clumped there, Burns and Hines. The post office for that area is in Hines, but really it's like across the street, right? Because that's how it is. It was funny. I saw a picture the other day. Kind of the idea of the picture was to say there's nobody even going outside because of this crisis that's up there. And they showed a deserted street, right? Most of the streets up there are deserted, man. I mean, there's like, it's outside. I mean, the people there will tell you this. They live outside of the middle of nowhere.
Right, and there's only 8,000 of them anywhere.
in the whole county.
Yeah.
In the whole county, you know. I used to, being a church guy, okay? So I would go up there and I'd speak at the local church, and I used to think, okay, this whole idea of radio ministry, right, where people listen to church on the radio, I mean, it's just a waste. You know, I grew up in the city. I was clueless on a lot of this stuff, right? So I get up there and somebody says, yeah, the people up here, they like to listen to the service on the radio. And I'm thinking, well, why don't they come into church? And they said, Dave, you don't understand. There's months out of the year where you can't leave your cattle. You've got to work every day. So the only way these people can go to church, and they might live 150, 200 miles away anyway, is to listen on the radio. And, you know, I came away from there with just a new appreciation of what rural life is, you know, can be like. And that's across so many levels. Just spending time with people, honestly, that were totally different from me, changed my whole understanding of what rural life in America is like.
So now you said you've been going up there for 20 years? I
have been. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. My first trip up there, right? So there's this church that contacted me and asked me about coming up, and you got to fly into Boise, right? Because that's only like 3 hours away for Burns. That's the closest, you know, major airport.
Yeah. And
so folks picked me up, and we're driving back, and about halfway through, we stop in some town where there's a Pizza Hut, and I'm sitting across the table from one of the guys from the church, and his regular job, you know, he does two things. He did two things. He was a brand inspector for the county, right, to make sure that, you know, all the cattle were branded properly. And then the other thing that he did is he would artificially inseminate cattle, right, so people could reproduce on their farms. And so, you know, he's a big man, a rancher kind of guy. He's completely comfortable. And when I started going up there, that was about this whole time, all this stuff with the spotted owl controversy was coming up. And he looks across the table, and he sees me as a city boy and kind of a lefty liberal. And you know, I do lean that way a little bit. And he says, Dave, I want to ask you a question. I said, oh, okay, go ahead. I had no idea what to expect. And he says, what do you think of the spotted owl? He says, just like that. It just kind of rolls off his tongue. And I looked at him, and I figured pretty quick where this was going. And I just looked at him, and I said, you know, Mike, I think I like them broiled. and he laughed, just like you did. And he looked at me and says, okay, we're going to do okay with you, even though you are a lib. And, you know, it was a long friendship, you know, with him in the community. But, boy, you know, it's different. If you live in the city and you've never spent significant time in areas like this, not only are you missing out, but you cannot have a clue about how the rest of the world thinks, man.
That is so true. And I grew up in the Bronx, you know. So, you know, and now I come out here to the west of the desert, you know, and I've been up to like Logandale, stuff like farm country like that, you know, places like that. But here's a guy, you talk about your friend there with the inseminating these cows. They go arm deep into that cow, man. They stick their whole arm. They put like a big rubber plastic thing on their arm, and they shove their arm all the way in.
They took me out to a ranch, right? Yeah. And they said, well, here's what we're going to do, Dave. We're going to do preg checks. And I'm like, what are you what you talking about, Willis? What do you mean a preg check? He says, yeah, okay. So they bring this cow in, right? They lock him down in the stock, and I'm probably going to get everybody in rural America in trouble, right? Because some of the far left environmental people have no clue what I'm going to say right now. But then what they do is, you put that glove on.
Yeah.
Right? And it does. It goes like all the way up your arm. And then you put dish soap on that. And then you hold the cow's tail up and you shove your hand up there. Right? And people are like, are you going to do it, Dave? And I'm like, well, yeah. And so in it went and into this warm kind of mushy body, right? And then I reached in there and I felt that new baby cow in there. I mean, that was amazing, right? But just thinking about how you got to do it, I asked him. I said, can I ask you a question? He says, yeah. I said, do you ever worry that glove's going to break? And he says, no, but I always double glove, Dave.
Well, now when you stick your arm in there, is the cow moving around? Is the baby cow moving?
The baby, it's like, like a baby in a mother's womb. I mean, there's a little movement, but you can feel that heartbeat.
Wow.
Right? Because they want to check him and make sure that, the insemination took. And I guess the only way to do it, since you're not going to go out there and x-ray a bazillion cows, right, is to stick your hand in.
Amazing. It's a whole different world.
Yeah. You know what his motto was? He says, Dave, I stand behind every cow I work with.
Okay, very good. That's some rural humor. Okay,
that's right. That's exactly right.
Now, this Hammond family, you knew them. You know them, I guess.
That's right. I mean, as I said, I run a ministry in southern Mexico. Their daughter has served with me for years as part of a medical ministry that I do every February. I've spoke at their church. I mean, I would consider them friends.
So then what happened? What caused them to get in trouble in the first place? What's their version?
Well, here's the difficult thing, right? I have a ton of friends up there, and you can talk to one family and you will get the God's honest truth. And then you can go a couple miles down the road and you can talk to another family and you'll get the God's honest truth. But, I think there's some things that seem to be somewhat, what would be the word, prevalent across the way.
Okay.
And it kind of works like this. And this is how frustrating it is. There was a fire set. That seems to be what the jury appears has decided. They, the Hammonds were sentenced by a judge outside of the norm, outside of the minimum that was allowed for the charge that that the government prosecuted. It seems that the sentence that was the minimum was excessive, but that's because they were charged under a terrorism act of 1996. I doubt that anybody. I mean, I don't think any reasonable person can look at it and say that these guys are or were terrorists or were involved in terrorist activity. They acted with the best intentions, and at the end of the day, right, you had X number of federal acres that were burned, and they were prosecuted for that.
Well, let me ask you a question. Now, how did this come to the attention of the authorities that they set this fire?
Well, there was already a fire in the area. That particular time, there was a big fire going on, and the Hammonds were looking at it, and when you live out on an open range and you see something coming at you, you're a little worried, and there's this progression of what firefighters in these areas are supposed to protect, right? And it starts with, the first up is human life, right?
Right.
And so if there's no human life in the path of the fire, they automatically direct their resources to fight, to save human life. And then after human life comes structures, and then after that comes, wildlife and livestock. Now, I think part of the problem is that if a family makes its livelihood with livestock, that darn near might be more important than that barn, right?
Right.
And that seems to be part of the issue here. I know from other friends up there that that particular year, this was a big fire. The year that happened, I believe it was 2006. That was a big fire. But I also know this, independent of whatever the feds did to help fight that or be part of it, I don't think that they would have been as effective as they were it not for the ranchers and the independent people that live up there. This is one of those kind of untold stories, right? I mean, as people say, the ranchers and folks don't care about the environmental impact on, the larger land and the wilderness. You just got to think logically about this. They're feeding their family off of this land, so it's in their best interest to care for the land, and many of them do. I mean, most of them do. Why would you want to desecrate the very land that's feeding your family? It doesn't make sense. But we got, look, am I an environmentalist? Of course I am. But there's got to be balance on this. And, you got one side over here that says if the species isn't native, then they have no business being on the land, right? So if you take that to its logical conclusion, and this is where some of them are on the far extreme, cattle should never be allowed to graze on federal land because they're not native. No, I don't know if how they're going to figure out what they're going to eat for dinner, right? Or how they're going to afford that. But that's the reality. I mean, these the ranchers that are up there, they work hard to take care of the land. They feel at odds with the feds, and it's a tough situation, but they try to work together. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The specifics of what happened on the day that fire started with the Hammonds, I don't know. You know what? I think the people that were there know in their hearts what happened.
Okay. But
like I said, I would tell you, you could ask probably 10 different people in that community what happened, and you would get 10 different answers.
Okay, now, but their official story, I guess their defense, their criminal defense was, hey, we were just doing a fire break to save our property from burning down.
And that they called ahead of time.
Oh, really? Okay.
And let the forestry or let the authorities know that that's what they were doing.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Okay, so they called ahead of time. Now, but now some people. Now, was it successful? Did they save their property?
Yeah.
And do you think that if they had not done this, they would have lost property?
I'd go back. I'd say, it was a big fire.
All right.
I don't know how. Can you say for sure? Probably not. Was it possible? Yes.
Okay. Now, what about neighboring ranches? Did any of the neighboring ranches take the same tactic and go out ahead and start to do these fire breaks or anything like that?
You know, that I can't say, but I will say from other folks that I've talked to up there that some of them were not very happy with how the feds had decided they were going to, I guess the term would be prosecute the fire or attack the fire, or, you know, and like one guy told me, he says, Dave, you get a new administration up in Washington, you get a new group here, or they hire a new person that's going to be in charge, right? City ICEs. And they come in and they tell us how they're going to do it. The reality, and this is something that I've learned in ministry and in learning how to work with people, is this. This is exactly what he told me. He says, we've got years upon years upon years in these parts. We know what happens. So why would you come in and just marginalize our opinions and all of our collective experience on how to fight an area in our backyard, thinking you know better? And, you know, that's what a lot of the guys will tell you what happened.
So a lot of the other ranches, their neighbors and stuff like that, the community, none of them, you're saying, support the federal government and the BLM and all that kind of stuff. Well,
I think I would not go so far as to say none of them support the BLM and the government, stuff like that. I think a lot of them would say that certainly that they're offended at the way that they've been treated.
Okay.
And that might specifically, have to do with kind of the view, and there is this view that the folks in Washington or wherever it might be, right, have a better understanding of how life should be lived and how the land should be cared for in this area than the people who are actually living on that land and caring for that land.
And there's no intermediary, there's no grievance committee, there's no ombudsman or something that they could communicate with. Is there anything?
Jeez, doesn't seem to be. The representative from Oregon has a video out today, in the last couple of days, where he's talking about how when they wanted to set apart part of the reserve of the Steens, Bruce Babbitt, who was Interior Secretary, then came out and talked with the locals, and the locals said, "Let us put together something and then show you that we can do this." And Babbitt relented from from essentially designating it under federal control and said, "Okay." And they worked together and got a good plan. But there doesn't seem to be a sense today that can happen right now. I mean, gosh, you look at, just pick an issue in the states, and I don't know that it really matters who's in charge in Washington. The other side is not going to respect the view of who's ever in the White House or who's ever in charge of Congress. So, even if there's a person in that position, right, how do you get to a point where you can talk about it in a way to get something done? It's just, the system is broke, man.
Right.
And the everyday guy is out there, suffering for it. I mean, getting back to the Hammonds. Okay, they were sentenced, right? And this is what's almost Alice in Wonderland like for me. Okay, because the people that said, well, the judges didn't follow the minimum sentencing guidelines for these folks are the very people who, in other cases, would decry, a minimum sentencing guideline and the type of thing that doesn't give any leeway to a judge. I mean, it's fascinating. And yet then on the other side, the people that, might be supporting the Hammonds, they would say, well, the minimum sentencing guideline is outrageous, but in other issues, they would support minimum sentencing guidelines. It's as if like we completely forget what we argued 3 days ago in another point of view. And in this case, it's a complete mess, right? I mean, these two guys, they're going to spend the next 3.5 years in prison.
That's originally they were sentenced I think it was like 1.5 years or something like that, and they went in and did some time, correct?
Yep. Yeah, they did.
And then
they did, and they allowed them. I think on that first sentencing, they allowed the Hammonds to serve those sentences staggered, so they would still have somebody at the ranch to run the ranch, and they had to pay a fine, and the fine was like $500,000. But now they said no, they're going to have to serve them. They both have to go in right now, and they said, but we're being kind and allowing them to go to the same place.
Right. Now, what would cause the federal prosecutor to make a beef about this? Like, does he have a personal gripe about this? What is his motivation?
I think he wanted to make sure that they were sentenced under the to at least the minimum that law called for. I think it's tough sometimes to divine the methods or the ideas of the prosecutors on why or what it is they were looking for. But clearly they weren't happy with a shorter sentence that didn't meet that 5-year minimum, and maybe there was intense pressure from the from the environmental lobby. I don't know.
Okay, but like neighbors and stuff, the community wasn't putting pressure on the prosecutor, right?
No, I mean, look, there's folks up there that will tell you that the Hammond family has had a history, a checkered history at best with the BLM.
Okay.
But I think at least most of the folks I know said, you know what, they served their time.
Okay, now, is that because of the allegations of deer poaching, and people are claiming that they were poaching deer and they set this fire to cover up their tracks? Well, I mean,
that's one of the sides out there. I mean, there's no doubt that that's one of the sides out there.
Okay.
Again, if you're not there, boy, it's just tough to know. I mean, here you got. I mean, it's just like one of the Bundys is out there saying now that the Hammonds didn't even light the fire. It was BLM people, with a drip line torch, or the drip torches.
Wow.
But you still have to come back to they were tried, and they were tried and they were convicted.
Was the deer
they were sentenced. They served the sentence they were given.
Right.
And then the federal government appealed that and said that the judge wasn't allowed under federal law to exercise judicial discretion there.
Now,
the question is why, right? I mean,
yeah.
Because I think that strikes at the question that we look at when it comes to punishment in the states. Is prison supposed to be rehabilitative, or is it to be is it for punishment? Are we thinking we're rehabilitating people and helping them learn from their mistake, or are we there to punish them and exact some revenge? I think there's probably some of both on each side, but clearly one side wants a certain level of revenge, I think, or a bigger level of punishment than what they originally got.
Now, the Hammond family and this ranch, are they rich? Like, because when you hear about the Bundys, they got like $1 million worth of cows. Are they? What I mean? They don't want to pay their money. And no one complains when you see poor people getting evicted out of their apartments. But everyone will run up with their shotguns up to defend the Bundys. Are the Hammonds rich like that? Is their property worth like a ton of money and all the cattle worth a ton of money?
I had a guy tell me one time. He says, "Oh yeah, Dave, we're all rich up here. We're all land rich and cash poor."
Yeah.
I mean, it's like being here in Las Vegas, right? I mean, you could have the greatest house in the world and think that you've got it made, but if you can't sell it, it's just a house, right? I don't know. I mean, that's just a tough definition. They're not sitting on millions of dollars. Their ranch is it's about 10,000 acres. So, you could probably do the math if you get if you get the price of the land. But, I think the fear is that, the BLM, at some point, right, through eminent domain, is just going to keep encroaching, and then it's not going to matter how much you have and how much it's going to be worth, right?
Gotcha.
If you've ever had a business or a piece of property that was taken through eminent domain, it doesn't really matter what it's worth. You're never going to be made whole.
Yeah.
In the process, it's somebody wrecks your car that you're not making payments on, and the auto club or your insurance company, whatever, gives you $4,000. You're never going to get $4,000. You're never going to buy a car for $4,000 that's going to be as good as the car they wrecked. That's right.
I got you. Okay, this is a good time to take a commercial break. We're with Dave Miller. We're talking about the real facts regarding the Hammond Family Ranch, this family up in Oregon. Everybody knows the story because these Bundy guys went up there. Dave's the co-founder and executive director of Adventures in Life Ministry, and the website for that is ailministry.org. We'll be right back after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. Pacific West Bamboo, your premier source for sustainable building material. They provide construction-grade and craft-grade bamboo material for all your indoor, outdoor, and gardening needs. Contact them for event planning and display building as well. 503-839-8126. Or you go to their new website, pacificwestbamboo.com. Or you can contact them on Facebook at Pacific West Bamboo. That's 503-839-8126. Amanda from Pacific West Bamboo was our first sponsor. She's been so good to us, so please support her in return. I want to make everybody aware of our new members section at www.oppermanreport.com. You can go there and sign up for a monthly, quarterly, or yearly subscription. You can even purchase episodes one by one. You get full access to brand new original content, new guests, new uncensored interviews, my own investigations and reports, and we're going to be adding sections with documents, images, police reports, either provided by myself or by my guests, or for my own investigations, my own reports. So you can go to oppermanreport.com and you can sign up there tonight. You can start listening tonight. Strawman. I want to mention Strawman. Strawman is a band out of Toronto, Canada. They're good friends of the Opperman Report. They're a trio of guys who share the same mindset most of us here do, and they put that energy into their words and music. So check them out at strawmanmusic.com and drop them a line to let them know that you heard them here on the Opperman Report. We'll be doing an interview with Sean Duffy soon. You can get an autographed copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, by visiting my PI website, emailrevealer.com. We also offer a computer and cell phone forensics. We can recover deleted text messages to uncover infidelity. We offer asset searches, locates, email tracing, background reports, and we can even trace your spouse's email address back to internet dating websites to catch them cheating online. You can reach us at 800-572-9762, or you can email me at emailrevealer@aol.com. New World Mexican Women. Everyone loves the New World Mexican Women. and their line of fine, handcrafted, authentic Mexican jewelry of stone mosaic and abalone stone inlay. In their first book, titled New World Mexican Women, available on lulu.com, they teach you how to make this jewelry, and they have a collection of love letters to their men from their hometown that have immigrated to the United States to find work. They have also published a new book entitled Azuquina to the Rodeo. It's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider, and she runs away with him without telling her family. You can find the New World Mexican Women by Googling New World Mexican Women. And you can ask them about their deals on wholesaling their fine jewelry and all of the other projects that they have going on. If you'd like to have your business or website advertised here and promoted all over the world on dozens of stations every day, give us a call at 800-572-9762 or email oppermanreport@gmail.com. And now back to our show. Well, not so soon. First, we're going to talk about MichiganMushrooms.net. They offer the highest quality chaga chunks available anywhere, picked fresh from healthy live trees in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, sun-dried and quickly shipped to you. They're very proud of their long-standing reputation as trusted farmers and collectors of wild, gourmet, and medicinal mushrooms. Customer service and offering high-quality products is very important to them. And they have a strict grading system that begins in the woods, and they would rather pass up a chunk that looks bad instead of passing it off to you, the customer. Additionally, they are recognized by the state of Michigan as mushroom experts. They are certified by the Department of Agriculture to sell 20 different species of mushrooms, and proof of this certification is available upon request. That is MichiganMushrooms.net or on Facebook, Michigan Mushrooms LLC. Got a brand new sponsor, The Rodeo of Doom by Miguel La Sala. The year is 2384, and Henry Fields is a down-on-his-luck adjunct professor in the architecture department at Andreas Tangen University in Los Angeles. But he has one thing going for him that others don't. He has enough of the coveted EP14 to live to be 200, if he wants to. Not that hard. When he saves a woman for certain death with a few drops of the EP14, a corrupt government agency tries to blackmail him into selling off his supply. Just when it seems like it might be a good idea, all hell breaks loose. The Rodeo of Doom was written by Miguel La Sala and edited by Margaret A. Harrell, the author of Keep This Quiet, memoir series. Now, she was also the copy edited Hunter S. Thompson's breakthrough book, Hell's Angels. According to Harrell, the Rodeo of Doom will grip you and pull you into the wild ride of a different reality. This is a consciously fast-paced journey into the future. Author Miguel La Sala reveals his craft by intricately weaving in fine details for his reader and keeps you anxiously anticipating what will happen next. Do not wait to read this book. There will surely be more to come from this author. The Rodeo of Doom is available on Amazon.com, and there's a link to the Rodeo of Doom in the Opperman Report bookstore. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here with Dave Miller, who is the co-founder of Adventures in Life Ministry. And we're discussing his firsthand knowledge and his firsthand observation of the situation up there in Burns, Oregon, with the Hammond family. Now, speaking of firsthand, Dave, I was listening to the radio this morning, and Michelle Fiore, our wonderful state assembly woman here, is saying that there's proof coming out soon that there's oil and gas and diamonds and gold underneath this Hammond Ranch, and that's the motivation of the federal government coming in there to seize this land. Any information about that? And Santa's elves are under there, too.
You know, it's interesting to sit and think about, right? If we've got trillions of dollars of blood diamonds socked away down there. If you're looking, I guess if you're looking for something, I guess you can find it. But I know this: nobody nobody in the Hammonds is secretly dancing on a bazillion bucks worth of diamonds, right? I mean,
so this theory that the federal government wants to steal their land to sell it to the Chinese, you don't endorse that theory?
I might say I can see the federal government saying that we want the land to be part of protected wilderness land.
Right.
But now whether we're going to sell it to the Chinese or not, maybe, I don't know, Michelle, she's something.
I know.
But she's probably not quite accurate on that.
Yeah,
but, it could sound good.
There's a couple of articles floating around, too, on the Internet about this story, too, from Before It's News and these credible sources about this real motivation. Now, what about the Hammond family? You think? Have you talked to them recently? Do they want these Bundy people up there with the...
I communicated with them a couple of weeks ago even about the possibility of coming on your show, and they said, we just want to be quiet and have our time with our family before the holidays. Dwight and Stephen, they had to report just a couple days ago, Monday, and the family just wanted their family time. Look, if you walked down the street and you saw these folks shopping in Safeway or Vons or whatever your neighborhood market is, they're just regular folks like you and me.
Right.
You never even recognize them.
It's so
they just wanted their time together, with the family. They've been out front saying that they're not. They don't want happening what the Bundys are doing. Of course, the Bundy response is, well, they have to say that, otherwise the full wrath of the U.S. government would come down on them. But even people in the community there that are generally supportive of the view of the Bundys are saying, you guys need to go home. We can handle this ourselves. We don't need people coming in from outside telling us how to live. I mean, that's their view of the federal government, right? We don't need people from the outside coming here telling us how we need to take care of the land. And you know what? They feel the same with the Bundys. They don't need those folks coming into Burns and saying, this is what you got to do. And it just, it's kind of interesting. I think, even Hammond Bundy, he goes, if they don't want us here, we'll leave. At least that's what he's reported to have said a couple days ago. Well, the people have spoken and said they don't want him there. The sheriff's asked him to leave. David Ward, he's a good guy. And they've said, we can handle this. And they're like, well, we're staying. I don't know what to do with that.
So you know the sheriff too then, right?
I've met the sheriff, talked with him. I preached at his church and had a nice long conversation with him. I came away, I just came away impressed. And the people up there say, you know what, Dave, he's a good guy. He's very well respected.
What do you make of this report where he says that his parents were being followed around and other family members and stuff were being intimidated by the Bundy group? I mean, what do you make of that?
Based on who I'm hearing it from, I'd probably say it's happening at some level. Is it menacing? It's probably not menacing, but it'd be tough for me to say no. I don't believe that that's happening because I know the people that are saying it is happening.
Right. Now, have you talked to anybody else up there that's reported this kind of thing to you?
Yeah, I mean, I've got friends that say, we kind of look at our schedule and try to make sure that we're not in certain areas if we know something's going to happen because we don't want our kids exposed to this or we're worried that something stupid might happen and our kids might get hurt. I mean, look, you've got outsiders that probably think they understand the culture of the area because they're sort of like-minded, but they're not really welcome there at this point overall. I mean, like I think it was David who said, or one of the other people in the community said it like this: look, we've got ranchers and we've got BLM and government folks here, and we've gotten along together for years. We can figure this out. You don't need that third group in there that has no vested interest in the community. Somebody said, speaking of the Hammonds, they said, look, when all is said and done, are the Bundys going to be out helping the Hammonds bring in the hay? Right? I mean, that's a big job, helping them, get the stuff done on their ranch. No, they're not going to do that. They're all going to go home to their own ranches in Nevada and Idaho and their own places and live their lives after they get their publicity.
Yeah, and if you ever followed some of the stories of what was going on up there at Bundy Ranch, where they were the different groups, the 3%ers and the Oath Keepers were like pulling guns on each other and having confrontations amongst themselves, and then you had those Millers who actually came down to Vegas and shot a couple of cops, which is a whole bizarre case where they turned out to be informants. Police informants involved with the Million Mask March and Occupy Wall Street and on every end of the political spectrum. I can't see how people up there in Burns should really be nervous, in my opinion, when you have these groups coming to town and eat dinner, at the finest restaurant in Burns. Now, what about that? Did you hear about how they left because no one's bringing them donations? They're not getting enough food donations, right? So they went into town to this finest restaurant in Burns. So you probably know where that is, right?
Well, I don't know. Is it the Pine Room? Did they identify it by name?
It's the Pine Room. Yeah.
I've eaten there.
Okay. Well, that must be a little uncomfortable too. To have these people wandering into town back and forth, and drinking it up at the Pine Room and going back up to the stand.
Look, this is what I don't understand. Okay. Yeah. You start with the question this, okay, is it a violation of law to take over a federal facility? It's a straight yes or no. Well, yes, it is. Okay. Then you don't have to go in and force the guys out. Like you pointed out, they don't have any provisions. So just put a ring around the property, and when those guys come out to go get something to eat, which they will in a couple of days, just pick them off. Just, arrest them there peacefully and take them away. It's as simple as that. You're only going to go so long without food. I mean, right. I was in the hospital earlier in the year, and they made me go like 11 days with no food. Ultimately, you know what? You're going to have to get a burger or run down to you're going to want to run down to the Pine Room. When you get in the car, just stop the car and arrest the guys. Take care of it. But it's like after the Vietnam War, we were really slow to do anything militarily because we were afraid of getting ourselves in another situation like that. And after what happened in Waco and at Ruby Ridge, the feds they seem to be nervous about dealing with these domestic issues when you have large groups of armed people. And I mean, I don't blame them, but that's the reality of kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I hear you. Oh, boy. Okay, so is there anything else that we're leaving out regarding the Hammond story? Have they turned themselves in there, right?
Right. Yeah, they had to report on Monday, I guess down to San Pedro, or as you might say in English, in San Pedro, just outside of Los Angeles. And so, they're there for the next 3 years and change, right? Here's what that means practically. A dad and a grandfather and a son, right? None of those guys, neither of those roles are going to be filled. The ranch is going to suffer. The feds, there's still at least a $200,000 payment that reportedly has to be made here pretty quick on their fine. And the two people that do the two main people that oversee and make sure all the work happens aren't there to help make that happen. And so what happens if they can't make that payment, right? I mean, do the feds make them sell the property then? I mean, is this going to ultimately bankrupt them? I hope not. I mean, I hope that's not what our country's at, and yet, if you look across the landscape at how we deal with people when they run afoul of the law, or we don't. It just doesn't usually end well. It doesn't matter who the family is.
Yeah, that's so true. When you throw one guy in prison, he's not serving time alone. His whole family is. And usually the longer they're in there, they lose their family on top of that. And I was telling you the story at that dinner that night. Reverend Pinkney, our friend of the show here, who's 67 years old, and he just gave him 2 to 10 years. He's probably going to do 7 on that little nonsense with the recall petition when the dates were wrong, and they sentenced him to 2 to 7 years, 2 to 10 years.
Right.
It's a life sentence for a man his age. Well, maybe.
No, it's just it's just all around, right? From the townspeople in Burns and Hines, and even out here close to where these guys in Crane, because it's to the Hammonds, to the Fine, to David Ward, the sheriff, to others. It's just a mess, and there is people that live there are worried because everyone knows this is not going to go on forever. Somebody's going to force an end to this somehow. I mean, do you think the Bundys are just going to say, okay, well, you know what? It's like Thursday. We've been here long enough. We're going home. No, they said they're willing to stay for years. Darn well the feds aren't going to let them stay for years. So what is this going to mean?
Are the feds up there staging? Have you seen them staging up there?
Nobody's saying they are. It's hard to believe, that they're not doing something. I think we all believe that they're. Well, certainly. I mean, they say they're monitoring the situation, and they're trying to come up with some kind of response.
And the sheriff's department, he doesn't have any kind of staff to go up there and confront them.
I think he has 2 or 3 deputies.
Yeah.
Right. But, the Bundys have said since David, the sheriff, doesn't believe like they do, he's abrogated his responsibility as a county sheriff. So they've completely dismissed him. I mean, that's kind of where they're at, that the county sheriffs, it's almost as if the county sheriffs are the most powerful men in America, in their point of view, but then only if they act as they want them to act.
Right. That's so true.
If the county sheriff has a different opinion than the Bundys, well, then he's wrong.
Right. Well, yeah, at the Bundy standoff, it was they're just so extreme, and these people are so bizarre that even after they won, and the feds backed off, they started demanding that the federal agents surrender their weapons on the stage. I was listening to it live. It's just insanity with these people.
Well, and what they're demanding here is that the federal government just cede control of the whole wildlife refuge, to locals. I think you'd probably it'd be interesting in the state of Oregon if the state would be willing to even take control of it, because there's budgetary issues, and Eastern Oregon is not rolling in the dough, man.
All right.
So how would that get funded?
Well, yeah, these guys aren't planning. They're not thinking too far ahead. Just all they say is, well, it's unconstitutional. So just give us what we want.
But you still come back to, how does it end well? Because I think probably you've got 2 sides here, right? If you're looking at the feds and the Bundys, neither one of which is going to want to lose face.
Yeah, the feds can't back down to these guys a second time.
And the Bundys probably are not going to say, well, we screwed up and walk out, because then they'll be delegitimized in the view of their followers, right?
Right. And all this has gone to their heads. They can call press conferences and stuff, and list demands and things. And Michelle Fiore, was like, oh boy, they're great guys, It's unbelievable. But Dave, we're down to the last 5 minutes, and I want you to tell us about Adventures in Life Ministry and what you guys do and how people can help you out, and if people want to get involved.
Well, here's what we're doing. We work with indigenous communities in southern Mexico. We are Christian at our core, and but what we do is, the first thing we did is we went down and we decided we needed to listen to folks. And so we let locals, in a sense, tell us how we can best serve them, as opposed to being a group of Americans with all the solutions going in and telling you what you need. And so some of the things that we've done, we started working in kind of an agricultural co-op on one side, helping farmers and folks up in communities that live by subsistence farming get higher crop yields and improve their lot and be able to get a better better return on their investment when it comes to their life of farming. But the other thing that we've done is we run a series of camps over the summer. A couple of them are highly evangelical, right, for the church side of what we do. But then we also run a week of what we call vocational camping, where we teach young people using local community leaders skills that they can use to get real jobs in Mexico. I sat a few years back with this group of kids. None of them were over 10, and I asked them what they were going to do when they grew up. And every single one of those kids had a variation on the theme of, I'm going to the United States because there's no hope here. I can't have a family. I can't get a job. There's no money. And so, I walked out of that and I said, we've got to do something. And so I put together a network of top chefs in Oaxaca, and it's one of the gastronomic hubs in the nation of Mexico. And they work with us to train kids. We have photographers and fine arts people working with kids to teach them skills. I have I have science folks from Las Vegas. The director of science at College of Southern Nevada helps run our program down there to inspire kids for science. And then we also take a group of kids, the group that is going to say, my life is going to be in farming, and we say, here are better practices so that you can do better at farming and have better yields. And so, we've got greenhouses on our site. We've got organic herbs. We have rabbits that we use if you want to get into growing rabbits and having those for your family. We have cattle there. We have sheep. We have a worm ranch within our ranch where we use the worm casings and the worm juice for fertilizer, so that we keep kind of an organic type of thing. And that's where we're working, a little bit south of the city of Oaxaca, the second poorest state in the nation, trying to get people some hope.
So we got a minute and a half. How can people, if they want to be involved, if they want to donate money, how can people help you?
Find us on Facebook under Adventures in Life Ministry. That's really where we do all of our work. Yeah, we have the other site, AILministry.org. You can email me, dave@ailministry.org, and reach us through Facebook. That's the best place. And if you want to learn a little bit more about Mexico, or you want to, maybe if we're in your community and you got a Mexican restaurant that we reviewed, you can find that at davemillersmexico.com.
Okay, great. And we're going to have all these links. They're going to be up on the Opperman Report blog. Dave Miller, thank you so much. Adventures in Life Ministry, thank you for your first-hand information there on the Hammond family. They tell them, if you talk to them, tell them that they're in our prayers. You know that. My audience loves to pray, man. And next time, too, we're going to have you back, okay? Because I'm going to be doing a story about those Mexican students. When I get that professor to come on, we'll come back and we'll talk even more about the work you're doing down there in Mexico. Dave Miller, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. Talk to you soon.
Good night, bro. Okay, they have him. Dave Miller, great guy from our church, gave you some inside information, first-hand information, accurate information, I like to say. So, and hopefully, if I do an after show, I can get into a little bit more about this. We'll talk about the Millers and all that kind of stuff. So, good night. Reboot first speaker.